We will kick off now officially. Sorry both of you for my rambling, sort of influencer-esque rambling while people are joining. I apologise profusely. So thank you everyone who has joined. This is the Ask Me Anything with the team from Lifeline Homecare. So Lifeline, I was put in touch with by their Birdie account manager, actually, who had recognised that the team had an incredible team retention rate. And so I was like, well, I have to speak to these guys who are clearly doing something right, and see if they're happy to share some of that knowledge with the Flock community. And luckily, I think, bearing in mind that they're on the live stream, that request has gone down well. So to kick us off, please could you just tell us sort of where Lifeline came from, how it all started, and of course who you are as well.
Yeah, sure. So
I'm Emma Gifford-Pike, and I'm the Managing Director of Lifeline Homecare. And Ross introduce himself.
Well, I am Ross. I'm the Director of Lifeline Homecare. So welcome everybody. I don't think there's any sort of magic trick that we can probably offer with retention, but we can certainly tell everybody what we've done in the past anyway. So we started, Lifeline Homecare was started by my mum, Peggy, and my wife, Emma, back in, I think, 2003. We couldn't remember if it was August 2003 or November 2003, to be honest, but a long time ago anyway. And Peggy, my mum's background had always been care. She'd been a home healthcare assistant at a local hospital, and then she joined a local care company back when I was, I think, 16, and helped. I think she was one of the first employees then, and worked there for many years, to be honest. And in 2003, both our background is medical sales, so we work for pharmaceutical companies all over the UK, and we just really sort of had an opportunity and a sort of a reset of what we were doing in our lives, and felt that we wanted to input more into our career and what we were doing, really. So yeah, decided to come out of that, phoned my mum up and said, look, we're thinking about starting a business. How about home care? Take your time, you know, it's a big step. I think about 5 minutes later, my mum phones back and says, yep, let's go for it. And that was the same year. That was in 2003. And then about a few months later.
So we sold our house where we were living in Oxfordshire, moved to Wiltshire, on the Wiltshire-Somerset border, because Peggy's experience was working with Wiltshire and Somerset adult social care. So moved to a completely different part of the country that we didn't know, set up a business in our study, in our house, and away we went.
Actually, the first weekend we started, I put these cupboards up on the wall, and I think we went away for the weekend. Came back, they were all on the floor. So it wasn't really a great start, but yeah, that's where we started anyway. That
was back in 2003, and then I think, as Ross said, Ross was still working for the pharmaceutical company at the time, and it was Peggy and I that started the business, and then we grew very quickly. So we started off just doing the care ourselves, myself and Peggy, going out, getting clients, doing the care, and then we needed to start recruiting other people. And yeah, we grew very quickly in the first sort of 6 months, and I was sort of also doing training, and we were kind of doing rotas in the evening, and you know, like a lot of small startups do, you sit there with all your different hats on and juggling all the different balls, trying to keep them all up in the air. And it became clear that as we were getting more staff in, I couldn't do the training and do care and do everything else. So Ross came on board then as our trainer.
About a year later, isn't it?
It was, yeah, after about the first year.
Yeah.
So I think at that point we had probably maybe 10 staff. And it just kind of snowballed from there. So from small beginnings, here we are.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I think it goes to show that you don't have to have like this huge grand plan office, you know, layout in place in order to start, or at least that wasn't your experience, that it just started with the idea of, I want to put something back in to the community, and then, you know, off you went. No, that's great. And I think that ethos is clearly kind of carried through to today. Definitely that sort of mentality of, you know, we'll get it done. Let's do it together. No, that's lovely. I think just so, because obviously we've got a huge range of kind of providers and people that have joined us. For Lifeline specifically, what types of services do you provide? Sort of what areas do you cover?
So we still work in Wiltshire and Somerset. So we're predominantly West Wiltshire and the Mendip areas of Somerset. And we're still predominantly elderly domiciliary care that we provide services to. We also do end-of-life care, and we do reablement and some discharge to assess services. But the majority of our client base is elderly care. And like I said, that's what we first started doing, and that's kind of what we do.
Yes,
so
it is, yeah.
That's the bread and butter day-to-day stuff.
Amazing. No, and I think we're really lucky at Flock and at Birdie to kind of work within that area and with providers like yourselves specifically. So yeah, it's something that I don't know myself well, having never been a provider, but I'm just constantly in awe of that kind of devoting yourself to that area, because we so need it as a country. so thank you for choosing elderly care. So I think I want to kind of discuss this incredible team retention rate. You mentioned that you've had a team member with you that's potentially been there for 20 years plus, which is incredible, considering that the standard industry sort of retention rates are very, very low. So, you know, quite high staff turnover. And then I think a lot of businesses then struggle to get staff in to replace the staff that are leaving. So it's a well-known concern that a lot of businesses have. There are many, many businesses that are doing it right and you know, doing it really well, and you guys are one of them. So from your experiences, like, what do you feel are some of the key factors contributing to your specific high staff retention rate?
So we had a long discussion about this between the two of us. So I wrote a few points down, and I think Ross has wrote a few points down as well, because I think our opinions obviously differ. I think we come back to the same sort of key areas. So I think my number one thing that I thought of was really about keeping it personal. So as we've grown as a company, I still think it's really important to our staff and our company ethos to try and, as you said, make sure that how we started is kind of carried through to how we are now. So we're still a family-run business, and although I'm the managing director, we still answer the phones day to day, all of us. We'll still do interviews for new staff. You know, I still know the names of all the staff that work for us. So if they answer the phone or I answer the phone to them, I know their names. I try and stay on top of what's going on in their lives, if they've got concerns, and so yeah, it is about trying to not be that level apart, that we're all in it together. And just because I'm the director of the company doesn't mean I don't know, Sally or Wendy or whoever.
Made up names, by the way.
Yeah. So that was my number one.
Yeah, I would just add, very similar really, just keep in contact. And I was actually saying before we started this about my experiences of working for different companies in medical sales. And I always remember I worked for this one very well-known company, and I think we had a sales staff of just about 400 people they just recruited, and we'd had a brand new managing director, and he walked into this conference room, and then they put the lights up, and he literally went through every single person's name and knew a small fact about them, whether it was a hobby or their partners or their children. Every single, it took ages, but it was amazing. I found that really empowering. That I think that's the point. It's fine when you start off, but as you get bigger, I think it's still really important that you stay in contact with everybody who's really right at the front line, making a difference and doing really all the hard graft there.
Yeah. So that was one. That was one key thing I think we thought of, and then I think the other things are to empathise and to listen to the staff and really understand what their day-to-day job is like. And again, one of the things that we took from our other jobs is, again, as managers, going out and doing a little field visit, if you can, whenever possible, to again, keep it personal, and then to really understand what the staff's day-to-day is like. And then you can take more of a holistic view of, and we'll come on to all these other subjects about how you balance the needs of the clients and the staff, and that you get their work-life balance right, and understand really all of those things.
Yeah.
And that really comes from knowing what it's like, when they're rushing around and they're late for clients and they're stuck in traffic, and how stressful and hard it is, because they really do want to do a good job. And what we need to try and do is empower them to do that. And that really starts from understanding how it functions and works. And just really trying to get them to feel valued and listened to. Mm. And again, I think they can phone up and speak to anybody in the office, and they know that they can get through to myself or Ross, and we will make time to speak to them and call them back and listen to what they've got to say. And then I think the final part is about support where we can, but also be honest about what we can as a company can do for them, and where we can't always help, but we'll do what we can to support, if that makes sense.
So essentially, like, not promising the world and then not being able to actually deliver on that, but being very clear about. No, I think that's something that every organization it's very tempting sometimes. I can imagine when someone sort of needs the world to say, I'll give you everything, but no, definitely that's a difficult line to draw, but it seems like being done successfully. We did actually have a question in the chat from Sarah, but I think you may have covered it simply in this previous one. But in case there's anything else to add, it's, do you think having been at grassroots level and taking all the roles at the startup stage has helped with your recruitment and retention strategies?
I think it certainly helps when care staff talk to us and they have particular issues, whether it's directly with a service user or with the travel that they're doing or anything like that. We've certainly experienced that. And so even, if I do some of the training for the carers, for example, it's not that I've just done it in a classroom, we've done it ourselves. So I think that it is very important. It has given us, it has helped, hasn't it?
I do think so, and I would say, if you've had staff that come to work for you in whatever roles that haven't got the care experience, maybe get them to go out and do like a field visit or some shadowing, so they can really see what it's like. Because one of the things we've always struggled to communicate to new recruits who've never done care before, or domiciliary care particularly, is it's just not like any other job, and it's really hard to describe. And I think it's even harder to describe if you've never done it or never seen what it's like. So
I think we even actually, and any roles actually. So one of our finance staff who's recently retired, it was no background in care whatsoever. It was just invoicing and payroll and such like. But we organised for them to go out with a shift, and it really helped them understand exactly what the carers have to go through, what the workload's like and everything. So I thought that was really helpful.
Yeah, it is such an incredibly unique. But I mean, and I think for a long time, almost that mystery around sort of like what it's like to go into someone's home and care for them has led to the stigma of like, oh, it's, let's ignore it. It's something that happens, separately. It's not something worth looking into. But actually having everyone, in the organisation at some point join on a shift or understand what it's like to be out there on a shift will not just go a long way, I guess, to helping people within, Lifeline or other organisations get it, but maybe the wider, the wider world will start to develop this real appreciation of sort of the work that happens there. So I'm just, we are getting a few questions coming in the chat, which is amazing. By the way, for those who have joined us here, if you do have any questions, please use the chat function, add them in, and I will get to them as we sort of work through the other questions that have been submitted. So please do keep sending them in. I had a question that had come in before, just sort of starting at we've got the kind of retention stuff, which we'll cover, but on the recruitment side, because obviously you are, still growing, you're doing, really well as a sort of home care business. Could you sort of briefly describe your recruitment process and how you attract sort of the best people for you?
It's probably the best thing you can do is if you, and I'm sure everybody on here has experienced that, if you get word of mouth, really. So, you have an existing employee that, are doing very well and they enjoy their job, and then they recommend somebody, and that really helps, we feel, with retention, because if they join, they already know a little bit about how we work as a company, what we're like from the person who already works with us. And in fact, when we first started, for the first good few years, we didn't really advertise. We just had word of mouth. So we've got lots of people that work for us who are either family members or friends who have joined us. But normally it's through sort of, as I said, advertising, word of mouth. We then do an interview where we have two of us set questions that we ask them. We do, although the questions are very general and sterile, we always get a feeling at the end. It doesn't really matter how well they've answered the questions, but if they're going to be the right fit and right for the role. The other thing we also offer is if they've not had any care experience before, or they just done care home work, is we sometimes offer a pre-employment unpaid shadow shift, so that they really get an idea of what care is like. Because we can sit here and describe to people who not into care what it's like, but when you, like we've already said, as soon as you go out to somebody's home and you see the hustle and bustle of it all, it's very different.
Yeah.
So that really helps. And then we also, with the people they're going out with, we make sure that those existing care staff tell us what they think of that new person. And that obviously helps empower them, and it helps us, because we trust what they're saying to us as well.
And it might be that if there was something at an interview, you know, people can get very nervous at interviews, and they don't perform, they don't show who they really are. And then once they're actually out with a peer or somebody, and then they relax a little bit, and then you kind of, so that shadow shift, that pre-shadow shift is, you know, we've had a few people who've performed quite well at interview, and then we've tried to explain what domiciliary care is like, and then they've been out and done a shadow shift and then said, do you know what, I don't actually think this is for me.
Yeah.
But that's good, because we haven't wasted days and weeks on doing somebody's induction for them to fall at the first hurdle, which is incredibly frustrating and time wasting. So anything we can do prior to that point to get the people involved and make sure they really know and understand the role before we and then commit to, you know, what is quite an extensive induction and training for, you know, process, then it does help. It's not foolproof by any means.
No, don't forget, you know, it's not everybody we recruit stays here for years. That's really important to know. But I think these are all little things that can help. You know, Emma's right. We quite often, they'll phone back and sometimes they say, oh, well, it's not for us, or I didn't realise it was going to be this or that. So, I mean, it just saves everybody time, really. The other thing that which we've done just recently, in the last sort of 3 or 4 years or so, is nail down and be very clear what availability to work means, nearer the sort of during either the interview stage or certainly before we sign any contracts. And I guess what we mean by that is if somebody's saying to us they want full-time work, for us in care, that could be split shift availability from 7 till 2, 4 till 10, alternative weekends. And for the person who's being interviewed, they say full-time, they think, oh, is it sort of 9 till 5 and, you know, 40 hours a week? They're not quite sure. So we sort of try and, at the interview stage, say, is it evenings, weekends, that sort of thing, to be a bit more specific about what they're looking for, what they're expecting. And sorry.
And again, I get, you know, you get the interview where people will say quite a lot of things at interview, but they're taking a lot of information in that we're giving them about the company, and they're not always they don't always take everything in that we're saying to them. So when we say, yeah, if you want 40 hours, it will be 5 days a week and split shifts. And very often people will go, yeah, that's fine. And then again, what we're trying to do is avoid getting to the point where they're on the induction course and we're going through and we're saying, okay, this will be what your shift patterns look like. And they go, wow, that's nothing that I expected. And you're like, that's what I thought I'd said to you at an interview, but that isn't clearly what they'd taken on board. So again, it's trying to get their expectations managed and realistic before they start even. So again, we're trying to sort of take down those barriers and hurdles, and get people really understanding what they're getting involved in. Like I said before, it's wasted and done their induction, and then they've said, oh, do you know, it's too much. Because very often what we find is first 3 months, people have a very high attrition rate. So they'll do the training, they'll do the job, and then within the first 3 months, they find they can't do it. So anything we can do to get them to really understand what the job is really like will hopefully mean they'll get past that first 3 months and then they'll stay. If that makes sense.
That makes complete sense. I think, yeah, the sort of achieving a high retention rate starts at bringing people on. So the two really clear things I think that potentially could be useful for people on the call just from that piece would be like absolute clarity about what the job involves in terms of hours, explanations, that sort of thing. And then this idea of a shadow shift, an unpaid shadow shift, I think that's really interesting and easier to facilitate one of those than to put someone through, as you said, sort of 3 months of onboarding and then discover that they don't like domiciliary care. No, that's really useful. I think so. There's been a few questions that have come through here. I'll come on to the retention focused ones in a second. I just want to have a look at the kind of like when someone has joined and that induction process. I'm going to try and do a sort of 2-in-1 question, because we had one previously which was sort of what kind of training and induction programs do you offer new employees? But then we also had a question from Tajinder in the chat, which was, what key messages do you share during induction that you feel support longer term retention?
Okay, so with regards to that question about key messages, first of all, I oversee all the training still. And one thing that I say throughout the whole induction is I highlight the importance of communication, about letting us contact us at any point, or your team leader, your area manager, and please let us know if things, need tweaking or changing. So I think the key thing is that, you only have to pick up the phone. If you're in the area, you can pop in. But that communication, the open door policies is very important to us.
And I think we probably didn't say this, although Ross is our trainer, so we still do have a high focus on face-to-face, in particularly induction.
So it's really useful two ways. There's plenty of online training courses now, and I'm sure a lot of us on this call do use those. It saves time, it's more cost effective, and there are literally so many things that we have to teach care staff nowadays. It's crazy, and you can end up filling weeks and weeks of training before they even get out there. So I'm not saying we don't use that, but we certainly spend the first week, it is all face-to-face. What we find is really valuable with that, because I actually run that myself still, and I find it's really useful to get to know the carer very well. And near the end of the week, they obviously relax a lot more. They can their expectations are managed even more. That we can answer any questions as they go through, and we'll see how they are actually progressing, because we are face to face, rather than here you go, here's a link to an online training course, and you can see the progress on some of these things, but you literally, they could be doing some ironing while they're doing it. You just actually have no idea how they're getting on with that. And I have seen that. When I do take on, I've got somebody I've taken on training this week, and we're talking about first aid training, and have you done it before? Oh yes, I've done it last year online. And literally you ask them a couple of questions and it's the same answers. I'm not quite sure about that. I can't remember that bit, but I know I've done it. And I just feel that it sticks a bit more if it's face to face. So I feel that helps. I think they feel more connected with the office because they're in the office, they're meeting everybody that's coming in.
Yeah, so on day one, they'll come upstairs, they'll get introduced to myself and Elizabeth, the managers. Obviously, they know Ross. If we can do and have more than one candidate. We also feel that really then helps if they have a good induction group of people. Then they know other members of staff as well, so that really helps. Even if they're not on the same team, it just really helps integrate them into the company more quickly. And as Ross said, I think it really does help underline how much we value them communicating and telling us about their experiences, because and again I'll come on to that a bit more, but it's quite often hard to really tease out what people are really feeling and what their struggles are and things, and if you've got that open communication and they know me and they've seen me and they've spoken to me on the phone, then they're less scared to come in for a meeting and to have an open, honest discussion about whatever we need to talk to them about. Yeah, it helps with the fact that they feel a bit more, they can approach us a bit more. I think a couple of things, just always with the training, make sure it's fun. And I always make sure that, if they don't know each other, first few minutes is always their usual sort of nervousness with each other. That's quite fun. But normally what I do is we'll have a break and I just leave them to talk to themselves. And by the time we come back from a break, there's a big difference to where they are. And I think the final thing is that we can then weave in through, and Ross can, through all the training, lots of real world examples that we've had from our own experience of, well, what does this policy mean in reality? Well, here's an example of where we've had to use this in this emergency situation, and here's an example of what I had to do here, so we can make it real, much more real for them, with or like I said, all the examples from our own experience, which again I think really helps. And we do also offer afterwards, the other important part of the training is for them to go shadowing and introduce them to the people they'll be looking after. That's so key. And sometimes I always say to them, if you need a bit more, just ask. Sometimes I need less, and they just want to get on and start doing the job. But that really helps.
No, I think that's great. So I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to. But I think from that those first few months in person, like that's the key takeaway here is. No, even though online training is very useful for some things, maybe refreshers, I've definitely been guilty of doing the ironing while doing some online training. So yeah, absolutely, in person, get people together straight away, faces to names, that sort of thing. So I have a question sort of for people that are with you at the moment. Again, I'm going to try and do a sort of 2-in-1 question, and I'll sort of work through some of the others that have come through from Julian and Gary and so on. But we had a question that came in from Karen, which was, do you have any sort of staff appreciation or reward scheme in place? Which I think was quite similar to sort of the question we'd had previously about sort of how do you recognise and reward outstanding performance for people? So we have long service awards that we do every year. So I think we do 1 year, 3 years, 5 years.
We don't do 1 year anymore.
No, do we not? We don't do 1 year anymore. 3, 5, 10, 15, and obviously now we're going to have to do 20.
Well, we've done 20.
and people get a certificate and they get some vouchers to spend, but obviously that is about recognising people who've been with us a significant length of time. We also have various, I think we have about 6 or 8 different levels of carer grade. And so when we first started, we wanted to appreciate that people just like being carers. Not everybody wants more responsibility because they really enjoy being a carer. And so we decided to have these higher grades, so people had somewhere to go once they've joined, and then they get MVQ diploma, level 2, level 3. Once you start going up from level 3 to higher qualifications, they become less about the day-to-day level of care. And again, not everybody wants to commit to just doing a higher qualification. So we felt we could recognise people's experience in the job and how well they do their job by giving them a promotion. And like I said, that isn't necessarily about taking on more responsibility or doing more. It is about recognising that people over the years become better carers because they are more experienced and because they have more life experience, and they've been with the company for a longer time, so they understand us. So they have these various grades, and then our highest grade that we give out to carers, they get a different uniform colour to identify them as kind of like our, and then and then we kind of almost give that an equivalence maybe to, you know, quite a more like a team manager, just to really recognise that, you know, they are really good at their job. So that is another thing that we do, and we can, when we do staff appraisals yearly, we review where they're at and whether they can work towards the next promotion and what they need to do to get there.
No, that's really interesting. I think that idea of sort of a promotion or recognition isn't always to do with the acquisition of new skills or the going up in the company. It can just be years of service, and with that years of service comes knowledge that you've accrued. So just had a question come in just related to this. I'll ask it. So does the different grades does that result in sort of pay awards as well?
Yes. Yeah. It's not huge amounts, and mostly people turn around and say to us after they're very grateful that they've had a pay rise, but the first thing they want to do is have their ID badge updated with their new grade on it. They do get a small recognition and increase in pay, but I don't think it's as much about that as the status of being able to say, absolutely, yeah, I'm level 4 senior carer, I'm level 5 professional carer, or whatever.
No, definitely. I think, and that's where sort of it's important to have much more to the culture and company than beyond sort of that, because that, people want that next step. There is a question which was asked a little while ago by Julian, but I think this may be an interesting sort of part of it. So he says, "Hi Emma and Ross, are there any tips you may have for a large organisation? For context, we were founded in 1933 and have around 800 employees." So I mean, this sounds like this could be a great thing, you know, that idea of sort of long service grades. You know, for example, is there anything else that, you know, perhaps you've already discussed or that you think would be relevant for sort of a very big organisation when it comes to satisfaction and team retention?
So I think I've probably said it before, and my only thought process that that Julian could do, and they may already be doing this, is having even the most senior person in the company go out with one of the members of care staff. You know, every so often. It's really important. That makes a massive difference, because, and admittedly, that care staff member might be a little bit nervous. I mean, you'd have to pick the right person, I suppose. But everybody in your team, everybody in Julian's team, you'll have lots of different departments, people that they've brought in that just do finance, okay, or just do training. They don't necessarily have on the field experience. We're much smaller, so we've been able to use that skill set. So I think I would recommend that if they're not already doing it.
Yeah. I mean, we do have regular team meetings. We'll try and get all the staff together for one area. We provide lunch and sandwiches and stuff, because invariably they can only ever all come in when they're not out busy doing clients, so and that's going to eat into their spare time. So yeah, so we provide lunch. We try and get them together every few weeks with their team manager, just to because the carers really like seeing their staff members and meeting other members in their team. And then it is then about reinforcing that you know, they are all working together for their clients and Lifeline's clients. That's what we're all ultimately working towards. So, and then sometimes it's good to kind of mix and match the teams as well. They do like to meet teams from other areas. We used to have a Christmas party once a year and get all the company together. And unfortunately, we haven't been able to do it the last few years because of COVID. So, but I know the staff do really miss that opportunity to have everyone together. So I think that might be something we'll look to reintroduce again.
It's definitely, it can be a very isolating job when you're sort of going into different people's homes, and there's, you know, it's not just the fact you're doing it on your own a lot of the time, but there's sometimes a safety element, or you have a difficult conversation with a client or stuff like that. So really being reminded that you're part of something bigger, that, you know, you are part of a team, that we are real people. We're here. I think that if possible, to get people together is a really good way of fostering that. We've got 15 minutes left, so I'm gonna go through some of the questions. I think we may have to do a part 2 on this. It's been really good chatting. I think so one of the questions I have, which is quite can be quite difficult, is sort of, how do you handle like feedback or grievances from staff?
I think, again, it's about trying to listen to what they're saying, but then also I think trying to unpick if there's things that are kind of underpinning what they're saying, and yeah, just sort of really trying to get to the nub of things. Some people need encouragement to really tell you what's going on, and I think it's trying to have the time to have that conversation, listen to them, but then also be honest and go back to what we said before about honest about what we can and can't do. And I think it's about saying, well, we understand where you're coming from in terms of, you know, what you've got going on at home or whatever it is, but we still have to make sure the clients are looked after and etc. So, and presenting people options. So we could say, well, we could do this, but the implications are obviously you might not get as much work if you're not prepared to go to, you know, a particular area to work in, or there's a particular client in the run that you don't like. And so quite often a carer will let things boil over. They don't say anything. They sit on it and sit on and sit in it, and then it all kind of comes like flooding out. And then they say, oh, I don't want to go to that person again. But actually, when you sort of try and unpick, well, what is it, you know, what is it, what isn't it that you don't like? Is it and then we'll try and give them options. So obviously the final option would be that they didn't go into that client, but then it might be that we try and give them a break from that client, or then we try and give them some extra training, or then we'll try and, but we always try and give them options, and then understand, you know, that, you know, there's always pros and cons to everything. And, you know, if the client's in the middle of a run and that's their run, we can't just, it's going to be difficult to take them out of just that one client on a permanent basis, but we might be able to do it on a short-term basis to buy some time for the air to clear, and then, you know, look at what we can do. So, but we have to be honest and say, well, I can't just not take you out of that one client if they're in the middle of a run, because it's just not practical. So we have to be honest about what we can and can't do. So I think that's really what we try and do with staff grievances is just listen to them.
And sometimes it's not so always clear exactly what the grievance is. Sometimes you need a bit more delving into it. And it could be anything. Sometimes we can help, sometimes we can't, but being honest, listening, sometimes face-to-face might help. I find that helps sometimes rather than just on the phone.
Definitely, and it is such a, as we said. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good. Sorry, I was saying to these guys I had internet problems before, so if I've dropped off at any point, I apologize. It is such a potentially high pressure, stressful, isolating job that, you know, but that grievances will come up. You know, people will have problems. There's no such thing as a sort of everything's amazing all the time, but it seems like the takeaway is sort of, it's that honesty piece. It's not being like, well, we'll fix absolutely everything and move heaven and earth to do it. It's sort of, here's the situation, I've heard you, I appreciate you may feel anxious, that makes complete sense, here are some options.
Yeah,
as opposed to, like, I think that's really, really important. I just wanted to ask kind of questions to do with this. It's kind of along the same area of this work-life balance piece. So we had a question that came in before of, how do you balance the needs of your staff with the needs of clients? How does that look?
That I think that's the hardest thing. That is the nub of our job. And it is the hardest thing of our job, because quite often clients want one thing and the staff want, you know, the clients, if they had their way, would have one carer 7 days a week, 24/7, and obviously the carers aren't able to do that. So it is hard, and again, it's going back to those honest conversations and two-way conversations with staff, but sometimes with clients as well. Again, you know, we have to give them that realistic expectation. If they have, you know, a 7-day-a-week package of 2 to 3 visits a day, you know, in reality, they're going to have probably a minimum of 5 staff as their core staff, plus others dipping in and out. And the bigger the package gets, the more staff. So, you know, when people come to us and they say, I only want 2 or 3 people, it's just in the reality of running a domiciliary care agency, that's never going to happen. Yeah. And again, we have to be honest about that. And when we're balancing, when a client comes to us and says, I'm not happy with that particular member of staff, they haven't been doing X, Y, and Z, and we have to do the same. We have to unpick what it is that we can do, and we have to give the clients options as well. So, sometimes when clients have personality clashes with staff members, it's nothing to do with that staff member's performance. It's just unfortunate some people in life don't get on, and we have to accept that happens sometimes. But we then have to try and manage that as a company, and say to the clients, well, what do I do about that? If that client, again, in the middle of a run, I can't say. So then we do sometimes take a decision, maybe where we have to say to that client, we may not be able to meet all your care needs. And we have done that in the past. It isn't, we have to make that judgment on, once we've had the conversation with the staff member and how it's affecting them, and once we've had a conversation with the client and how it's affecting them, then we have to make that judgment and then say, well, what can we do? So, and again, we'll present the client with options and say, well, it might be that during staff shortages and holidays, and we may not be able to do every single one of your care visits if we can't put carer A and carer B in because you don't like them. What would you like to do about that? And so, yeah, it's about having those tricky conversations. And we have team managers that run our care packages, and they will go out and we'll support them. So I know they've been out and they've been nervous, so I've gone along to the meetings with them if they feel that they need that. And again, I can sit and I can listen to the clients, listen to what they're saying, and then we can give them options. But very often it is a case, I can't magic staff that are available.
No, I think that's really, it's kind of similar to the sort of handling team feedback and grievances. I think that it's really refreshing in certain ways, but it seems like, to help you hit that high retention rate that you are, honesty, options. Sort of those are the things, be honest and empathetic and provide options. Don't provide anything that won't work or that you feel might not work. Provide options that could make it happen, but as long as everyone's aware and nothing's covered up. I think that clearly is having like a really, really big impact on it. And definitely also, you yourself, Emma, being there for some of the more tricky conversations. That's definitely a very important role to play to help people feel supported. I'm sure. I just wanted to so that sort of not the flexibility around runs or packages or that sort of thing. So we did have a question in the chat, and again another question that came up around sort of the use of technology for kind of supporting this. Obviously, you are partnered with Birdie, which is great. That's for those of you who don't know, Birdie is a sort of technology for home care providers that helps with sort of care planning, rostering, medication management, all of these things. For your teams, and for you as well, would you say that the implementation of technology like Birdie has contributed to sort of the day-to-day experience for you and for the team at all?
Yeah, definitely.
So I think it's given the carers actually more active input into how the packages of care, the service users, care visits are actually run. They feel that they can you know, if there's any tasks that are missing or anything they want to add or any new medication that turns up, everything's so instant. And so if there are, before, where there was paper all over the place, it's just not very reactionary. The other thing is also with the visits that they do, and their rosters. It's, you know, they can see instant changes. We can now message them within the Birdie directly, Birdie app directly, which is really getting great feedback. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah. There was something else I was going to say. I think, so them being able to see their work, their rota, and then being able to read the care plans and the care notes, I think they find that really empowering, particularly if it's a new client that they've not been to, and they can have the option. They haven't got to walk in the door and, you know, go in completely cold and say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know anything about you. I'm going to sit over here and read this care plan." They can do that before they go in. And equally, if they've had a week or two's holiday, they can catch up on things by just reading the last few care notes before they go in to actually in through the front door, which again, I think carers really do value, because they hate going in and not feeling like, you know, who would want to walk into somebody's home and then feel like I haven't got a clue what I'm doing here, and you're starting from scratch. So having access to that information, and then, as Ross said, having that input to say, oh, this cream is here, it's not on the MAR chart, what shall I do about it? And we can go, okay, yeah, that's great, take a photo, upload it onto the records, and they can see it done in real time. And one of the processes we've been trying to build in as part of our auditing, and when we're looking at tasks and things, is actually, as Ross said, getting carers involved and saying, well, what are you really doing here in this client? Are all these tasks necessary? What's changed? So they can input into that process as well, not just feel that it's team managers who are going in and making all the changes. So that was really useful.
No, I can imagine. No, thank you for that. I think we have hit time, but we've had like additional questions come in that I just want to finish on one very quick one. And for anyone else who's asked questions, we will get back to you separately on that. And thank you for contributing. Last one came in from Gary. Is there anything in particular which makes you feel that you stand out as an organisation in the way you attract and retain your staff?
Oh gosh, wow. I think I'm so proud of our company and what our staff do, and having been out there and seen what the staff do on the ground, you know, they are all amazing. Absolutely amazing. And I think I hope that comes through in everything that we do. Just reading what our carers do on paper and in Birdie is great, but it really doesn't replace seeing what they really do when they're out there, and how caring and amazing they are. So
they're amazing. So just make sure you tell them they are.
I think absolutely incredible. Like, that's what makes you stand out, is you have a deep and unconditional belief that the people who work for you are amazing. And I think that then becomes reciprocal, right? Because they're proud to be there, you're proud to have them there. No, completely. Thank you, Ross and Emma. That was, and there were so many useful points in there, I think, for organisations of all sizes. Thank you so much for your time. Really, really appreciate it. And thanks everyone for joining us as well. Have a fantastic rest of the afternoon, and the recording will be available shortly. Sorry guys, you will be committed to video for a while yet on the blog. So Thank you all, and thank you, Ross and Emma. Have a fantastic rest of the day.
Thank you.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
Bye.